welcome to everyone calling in from all over. Actually, both Europe, we have Middle East here, we have parts of Africa as well. So welcome everyone. I'm honored to represent Dale Carnegie today to spend, let's say, a half an hour on sharing some insight from recent research when it comes to building corporate culture. We will share what is actually working out there and what is not working. And then after that, we will hear from business leaders what is actually their experiences in what's working well. So with that, let's kick off and let's get ready here also to use the chat for sharing comments and any questions we may have during the session here. So today it's about two things. Again, we are going to share some pieces of research, not only from Dale Carnegie, but also from others. How is actually research showing about, for example, remote work and the disadvantages and the advantages? And also, we will have that chance to discuss with leaders what's going on in their specific business, in their specific industries. So this is all about culture. So to set the scene, let's just agree, what is culture? Because culture covers so many things. And we can use the model here from Shine, who back in the 80s established, let's say, an overview of culture, dividing it into three parts. Part one, being all the things we can see, that being physical objects, but it could also be simply the behavior. So when we start a meeting, who is speaking first? Are we having lunch together in the canteen? These are behaviors we're seeing, and this is actually a reflection of the culture. Now, working remotely, obviously, we are seeing different behaviors, or we might not see any behaviors. Then we have the espoused values. These are, let's say, the values that the companies are claiming to have. They might have them as well, but at least that's what they claim. For example, about purpose description, mission statement, vision statement, etc. The third piece are the, let's say, the shared common assumptions that are so much integrated in a business that we hardly are aware of them. These are the integrated things that we simply expect from each other, whether it's how we can react to different things in a different environment. So culture is a lot of things, and culture is important. We have all seen and heard about Peter Drucker and his statement that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And it is worth it to talk about culture. Let's look at some reasons for talking about culture. Reason one, it's about bottom line. Actually, it shows, literature and research shows that up to half of the profit, operating profit of companies is actually coming from the different cultures within the companies. That is what research shows. And secondly, we see that more than half of the employees we have, they're actually ready to leave their business or their company today if they get aware of a better culture somewhere else. So we all want to hold on to talent, and especially in these days working remotely, who are our talent and where are they? So this is important stuff, and therefore at Dale Carnegie we have done numerous researches on culture. One research we did covering more than 1,000 senior leaders across many continents and different levels in the organization. We wanted to find out, what are the culture champions? What are the strong companies doing differently? So we defined 4 criteria for a so-called culture champion to see what is it they do differently. So these are leaders who both indicate that they have a strong culture. Secondly, that they are exceeding the financial goals. And thirdly, that they have a lower staff turnover than others in the industry. And fourth, that the employee engagement is higher than others in the industry. And looking at the research, it shows that 13% of the companies are defined as, let's say, the culture champions. So let's look at what is it they are doing in terms of being successful with the focus on culture. And if we take these three pillars here, we see the culture champions, they are scoring 96% in terms of whether they set culture as a priority. And in terms of having a strong impact, 95% of these leaders, they are saying that it has a strong impact. And here we see an even bigger difference. 89% of these culture champions, they believe that it has a strong impact on the bottom line. So it matters, and the strong leaders, they deal with that and adjust to whether the environment is in the remote world or in person. We need to deal in any environment. Because what is actually the right culture? Well, it's hard to say, and actually it doesn't exist, the right culture. It's all about being in the right place with the right tools at the certain time. What we can say is that companies that represent, sorry for this, I had a little blackout here. Okay. Sorry for this. Companies that are having these four elements here, they are obviously having some toxic issues related to the culture, so that we don't want. So the right culture, well, it depends on the certain environment, and certainly the environment has changed over the last 6, 7, 8 months for all of us. In other words, the corporate culture is under pressure. We all see it in our businesses. We see, for example, that all this remote work has created complications. I mean, just now I had a blackout or internet breakdown that actually lost my connection here on my screen. That's just one little example of having complication working remotely. Secondly, the markets are more uncertain than many of us remember. One parallel story, I remember myself working in Ireland in the banking industry back in 2008-9. That was a time of crisis. And there we had to deal in a new environment with the task of actually surviving in a banking crisis. Right now, it's pretty much the same. We are all challenged, and some have even seen regulatory uncertainties challenging the way we are doing business. Third, we are seeing financial strains. Of course, there is businesses who really see hard times in terms of income streams, and also layoffs have taken place. Other companies have actually seen an increased business. As an example, we all know Amazon, as an example, have risen something like 60% on the stock exchange during this year. The fourth element is that many of us have had to change strategies. And strategies can be, of course, picked up in many ways. But for example, here at Dale Carnegie, in March, when the world changed, also for us trainers, well, basically from one day to the other, all planned trainings were canceled. And we had to establish new strategies to be ready to help companies and people to adapt to their world. So in Europe, we adopted by training ourselves to be competent and relevant in the marketplace by becoming certified online trainers. This was a shift of a strategy to meet the goals of the business. So now let's take a look at all this remote work. And let's start by asking, what is the situation in the company that you are representing? So in a moment, we will have a poll asking the following question. Let's ask, how many employees at your organization do you expect that will work remotely going into the remainder of 2020? Is it A, B, C, or D? And Jonathan, will you help us sharing and setting up this poll, please?
And yes, so we will now see on the right-hand side of our screen a poll there. So if we just choose one of those 4 options there and click Submit. Once you've chosen, we'll keep it open for about 30, 40 seconds. So just another 20 seconds there, and then we'll share the results live in the group. I can see we have 36 have already submitted their responses. We'll just give you 15 more seconds now.
Very good. We have the submit button in the bottom right, if you didn't see it.
Great stuff. I'm going to close the poll now, as we've had the majority of the group there. So thank you for taking part. So it'll take a few seconds for those results to come on screen now. Shouldn't take longer than 20 or 30 seconds there.
In a second, we will see it. Am I right, Jonathan? On the right side of the screen, it will appear in the bottom right.
Yep. So as soon as those are ready, we should be shortly. There we go. So I'll open up those results there. So we'll see now on our screen the results of that poll we just ran. There we go, Soren.
Thank you so much. So we see considerably more will stay remote after, during this time of crisis, and obviously this has consequences, and we need as leaders to deal with that, especially when it comes to the culture. As we just saw, it has a huge impact on our business. Let's take one look at returning to work. So those companies who are considering it, what are some disadvantages that we have to face if we are asking employees to come back? For example, we will have a limited access to the global talent that actually the remote world is giving us. So if we require our employees to come back, that might actually limit that possibility. Additionally, costs will increase. We're seeing an average cost in a level of £10,000 for a person working remotely half the time. Is this annual saving for a company? And thirdly, actually, when we have asked internal lawyers in companies, it shows that there is a concern. What are the risks actually of lawsuit from employees who may claim that they were, let's say, they got infected or contracted during their working hours? So these are things we have to consider, and of course, much more. From an employee perspective, well, it actually shows that people like generally to work from home. And one reason is that we avoid commuting back and forward, and even dress code might be an issue. And we actually see that productivity has increased during this time of working remotely. So there are good reasons actually to work remotely, and thereby that creates disadvantages for taking people back to work. Now, working from home obviously represents some advantages and some challenges, and we all have tried it. So in a moment, let's share in the chat, bottom right corner, let's share what are some challenges we are seeing from working from home. Let's share in chat so we see what are actually some challenges we are seeing here in the working space when we work from home. Peter Wetterman here, being part of a team, absolutely. The need to feel connected, thank you. Andre, difficult to disconnect from the laptop, absolutely. We have that, what is work-life balance when we work home, and we see that also coming in from others. Very long working hours, absolutely. Thank you, Noah. A lot of good reasons or challenges working from home. Thank you so much for sharing all this. And all these things, we all have seen them. And here we see simply a summary of actually what's coming up here. We had also the security coming in from some people here. We have the data protection here, but surely definitely also this social isolation. One of my clients that I'm working with, when we ask about what are the most crucial challenges right now is actually that within that company, having around 500 employees here in Poland, they are seeing people becoming sick from this feeling of being isolated. So these are maybe things that are starting to appear here in the later period of feeling of working remotely. So let's take this seriously. And let's also remember that fewer than 1 in 5 actually wants to stay working remotely in our business. So what can we do as leaders? In terms of working remotely, there are 3 tips that let's say the cultural champions are doing and effective leaders are doing. Firstly, we need to uncover what is the situation in our company. One of our largest clients here in Poland, and actually for the entire region, is currently making an internal survey to benchmark with other, let's say, divisions within that group. How is the atmosphere right now? And also they are doing an external benchmark to understand what is the engagement level and feeling about this workplace thing. So let's make sure we have uncovered it. Step 2, we need to communicate clearly. What is our policy? And if we are bringing people back to work, how do we do it? Why do we do it? What is the order, etc. And thirdly, we need to be human beings. And that is what we have to do in this remote world by meeting our employees on one-to-one basis. At Cisco, they have realized this to the extent that one-to-ones, or they call it check-ins, have become part of the KPIs that as a leader, as a team leader, the goal is that you have 2 short check-ins on a weekly basis where it's more about actually how can I help you? How do you feel with the current situations? So let's take these actions as leaders to make sure that the whole policy about working remotely does not interfere negatively with our culture. The second point, what is actually the feelings and the status among our employees here? What do we know about that already today? So in a moment, let's ask here among our attendees, how have the experiences, for example, during recent events, impacted your organization and the way people feel? Is it A, B, or C? So Jonathan, please take it from here.
Thank you, Søren. Again, that poll is now open for us on the right-hand side. So just as before, if you choose one of those options, A, B, or C, and then click Submit. And again, we'll leave it open for about 40, 50 seconds, just to give us all a chance to read through those, and then bring that poll to a close and share those answers. So you've had 23 answers thus far, so thank you. Keep them coming, keep them coming.
I can tell from my personal point of view, being through those last 7 months here, of course, in March, it was a very stressful time. All business was literally gone from one day to the other. And then, within a month or 2, I saw the power of Dale Carnegie as an organization having the tools to help me, being empowered to actually help the companies and participants here in Europe to deal with the skills they need to develop. So I saw this fluctuation of my feelings during this time. But let's see what the participants here are saying. Thank you for sharing.
There we go. The results are live now.
Okay. So we see an even split between A and C. So well done, leaders. Well done, leaders who know and feel that our employees feel more valued, confident, connected, and empowered. And then for all of us who feel that it might be less, let's think about what are the actions we need to take. And why do we specifically talk about these emotions of feeling valued, confident, connected, and empowered? This is because these values or these emotions represent actually the critical elements of having engaged employees. Numerous research, Dale Carnegie has done it again and again, and it's supported also by research from Gallup, shows that to have engaged employees, they need to have these emotions. And the main drivers for these emotions are the specific and very immediate manager. He or she plays a crucial element in, for example, having those small check-ins. How are we doing today? And the trust in leadership, for example, about the strategy we are taking. And do we feel proud in the organization? So these three are key elements. And then we have seen over the last couple of years, two other elements coming in with the new generations, that we need work-life balance, and also the general working environment is impacting these emotions. So as leaders, it's critical that we do what it takes to develop these emotions among our employees. Not only they are becoming more engaged, they are also becoming more resilient. We are seeing that people who feel valued, connected, and empowered, they are 77% more resilient, for example, to deal with challenging times as we have now, meaning that they can rebound faster and stay positive while we have a difficult time. So leaders, let's do what it takes to make people feel valued, connected, and empowered. And it is hard when we work remotely. We all have had these meetings. We have one right now where we are meeting virtually. And having these virtual meetings can be challenging. Let's share in chat, what are some challenges we experience working remotely in terms of having these virtual meetings platform, whether it's WebEx, Zoom, or whatever. What are some challenges using these platforms? Please share in chat. Thank you. We see a lot of stuff coming in here. Missing body language, technical problems, absolutely. Distractions. Distractions, classic thing. A phone is ringing, the courier is coming. One thing that I observed a lot working from home, the dog is barking, concentration, distractions from emails, absolutely. All these things matters a lot. And being a leader, we need to deal with that and be focused on our employees to have that engagement because it matters. And we have seen that over the last 8 months, recognition has actually gone down. There is a survey done by a company called Tanner who has seen that the recognition, both the formal and the informal, during this COVID time has gone down. And recognition is possibly the most effective tool that we can use as leaders to recognize the effort. So let's use it and deal with the challenges of working remotely. The second thing is that we have seen the support coming down. There is a survey from PwC that the support that employees feel from their employer has gone down. So that could, for example, be what tools do I need to be effective in my work? Or what skills do I need to develop to be effective in presentation training, for example, or in presentation online? And for example, one of the things that we are providing at Dale Carnegie is we are helping individuals also doing, let's say, effective presentations online, because that has been a need, a support that the employer would have to provide to the employees. So therefore, let's take responsibility about the experiences of our employees and build that engagement through, first, review what is the status, and secondly, let's make our employees feel valued, confident, empowered, and connected. Let's create that time and space for them to connect to each other. The third element is what we call the diminished social capital. This is about having access to employees and colleagues. We might want to reach out to ask for help later on, and in order to be able to do that, we need to build up our, let's say, social capital account. And what we have seen, the survey shows, is that actually during this COVID times, the strong ties that we have, for example, within our team, they have become stronger, while the weak ties have become weaker. So it may be time to update, let's say, our stakeholder map to understand, am I actually staying close enough in contact with everyone that really matters? Or do I actually need to work on our relations? If we do not do that, we have a risk of, for example, losing that engagement that we talked about. And also, we have the risk of creating subcultures. Subcultures may be totally fine, but as leaders, it can be a challenge towards what culture we want to create if we are suddenly starting to divert into many different areas. Another thing that we see that champions are doing to be strong when it comes to the social capital is to be very clear on having a shared purpose. So in times of uncertainty, it is crucial. It's crucial to have the ability to know what is actually the purpose of my company, and have I translated that as a leader? Have that overall purpose been translated into my unit? Because a clear purpose can help every employee to understand what's actually on the agenda for me, and thereby reduce uncertainty, especially during these days. Now, we are about to come to the end here. So in a moment, we are going to take the panel discussion. But before just doing that, let's just have a very brief review here of the last element in terms of summarizing here. So let's summarize what we have gone through here in terms of the research and what are required from us as leaders. So number one, let's make sure that we understand our organization. Let's do the survey. Let's take these qualitative interviews to understand what is actually the temperature today. And two, focus on developing these emotions, valued, connected, confident, and empowered within our teams. That's crucial for engagement and crucial for the resilience. And third, we need to give time for people to meet. And if it's not possible to meet in person, we need to facilitate and encourage that our people are meeting, because people need to feel connected to something bigger than the specific task that we are working on now. So these are the conclusions from research and from our everyday work as trainers. But now let's hear what are actually some examples of leaders' experiences dealing with this environment. Mark, may I hand over to you, please?
Sure, my friend. And Søren, thank you for the way that you've just presented our session with great clarity and passion and spoken like, that's how you do it online, is with authority and gravitas. Thank you for sharing. We're very honoured today. We have three very competent, professional leaders with us today who are going to share their insights into their experience in the last 6 months or so. Let me just welcome them one at a time, and they can come on camera and say hello to us. So let me just kill my camera for a second. So our first speaker has got more than 20 years of managerial experience in the IT and software industries. and currently she holds the position of Global Go-to-Market Lead at Microsoft in Israel. And she's responsible for designing and executing global marketing strategies for startups and software companies. In addition, our speaker is a noted public speaker herself and is especially passionate about the impact of technology on life, business, and culture. She also is a mother of 2 sons, one of whom is on the autistic spectrum, so she is a very vocal advocate for diversity and inclusion in the workforce and the community. Please welcome everybody, Adi Moore. Come on camera, Adi.
Hello, everyone. I'm very excited to be here today participating in this panel. Thank you, Mark, for that incredible presentation. And I'm looking forward to having a great discussion today.
Good stuff. Thank you, Adi, for being here. We appreciate your time and look forward to hearing from you in just a second. Good stuff. Thank you. So let me introduce our second panelist here. This person is the Learning and Development Manager for Portakabin. Now, Portakabin are probably the leading organisation for the provision of modular buildings right across Europe. Our speaker has over 20 years experience in retail, FMCG and construction. And during that time, he has gained valuable insights, especially in the area of apprentices and how apprentices can support business strategy. His organisation has flourished in the last 7 months, and we look forward to sharing some of his insights as we move forward. Please welcome our second presenter today, the Learning and Development Manager for Portakabin, Nick Vernon. Come and say hello to us, Nick.
Good morning, Mark. Sorry for that outstanding presentation, and I look forward to taking part in today's discussion.
Good stuff. Thank you very much, Nick. And our third person today is the Director of People Operations for, is it Cello Health? Cello, is that right? Yeah.
It's cello as the instrument.
Thank you. Cello. There you go. Good to check. So since 2005, she's led people and teams across Cello Health. She was originally a life science strategy consultant, and more recently, she's now the founding director of an organisation called the Resonance Coach. Please welcome our third presenter today, Cassandra Ritz. Say hello to us, Cass.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, everybody. Really lovely to be here. I'm delighted to be here. And in order to keep things real, I'll let you know that I literally just spilt an entire glass of water over my desk because, you know, we're all at home. Well, some of us are at home, some of us in the office, but when you're at home, as you can see, this is my daughter's bedroom. In the essence of keeping it real, I'm delighted to be here and really pleased to be able to talk about keeping the reality of life alongside the working from home and working in an office environment in a situation as we found ourselves over the last year. Thank you for the invitation, everyone.
Good stuff, and thank you for demonstrating one of the challenges of the new normal. Spilling water on,
at least it's water.
Spilling water on your computer desk. Okay, while we've got you on camera, Cass, why don't we go to you first? As you reflect on the last 7 or 8 months, what would you say are some of the leadership lessons that you've learned both personally and in your organisation at Cello Health?
Thank you, Mark. Yes, absolutely. I'll start with what I've learned personally. I'm a great believer in constantly reflecting on how I operate as a leader and what's possible throughout the experiences that I've had. So for me, the main lesson I've really learned is about role modeling the kind of behavior that I'd like the organization to demonstrate. So whether I'm operating as a first, second, or a third line manager, leading teams has become very challenging when you find yourself wanting to serve everybody in your business, finding a balance between the work that you do, being in the same energy. Somebody mentioned my work has become my office. being in the same energy field as you are when you're working in somewhat stressful conversations, as when you're eating your breakfast or having dinner. And then having to realize after maybe it took me 3 or 4 weeks that I needed to make a very clear separation between what I was doing for my work and what I was doing for me and for my family. So lesson 1 was certainly recognizing what I was doing about my own well-being. I'm also a well-being lead for Cello, giving advice on how to keep work-life balance, suggesting that people took breaks, particularly when we were right in the midst of lockdown, when the only thing you could do was go out for an hour a day to make sure that hour was taken. But recognizing that in supporting everybody else around me, which has been my leadership style for many years, that I wasn't necessarily serving myself. And so I wasn't role modeling the behavior I was trying to encourage. And then what's alongside that for me, it's almost the flip side of it, is learning to trust the people that you work with when you can't see them. Yeah. You know, it's a very old adage that you hire great people and let them get on with their job rather than assuming you need to do it all for them. But when you can't see people and when you can't see how they're feeling or how they're getting on with their day, it does start to call into question how much you trust them and perhaps even how much they trust you to be a leader who sets direction, to be somebody who delivers on promises, and also really engenders in them a sense that you do trust them and you do believe in them. Because certainly in a virtual environment, it feels more important to deliver on your promises. Because you can't see when somebody may not be able to do that as a result of something that suddenly happened in the office environment. It almost seems more acceptable that the CEO's drawn you into a meeting in the office than it might be that at home, my daughter who was homeschooling needed me for half an hour. And she's definitely more important than the CEO in my life. So, I'm not sure she always feels that way, but I know that that's a real truth. So role modeling and trust are the 2 key learnings for me.
Good for you. Thank you. And thank you for reminding us about those, Cass. I know that looking after ourselves is really important. And if we don't do that, it's really tough to look after other people. And we are humans first, and keeping our leadership standards, for me personally, has certainly been a challenge in the last 7 months. So thank you for keeping it real. Next question to you, my friend. What reflections do you have in the last 7 months on personal leadership and culture at Portakabin?
Thanks, Mark. So one of the challenges we've had here at Portakabin over the last 7 months is we weren't equipped to work remotely. It's as simple as that. The proverbial stuff hit the fan on the 23rd of March when our IT department, when we only have 50 VPN licenses and we have 700 people that work at our head office. You can imagine the discussions that happen. So we've learned very quickly that we need to be more agile and we need to adapt. I think the thing for me is we need to be, as leaders, we need to be parents more than ever before. And I think it's really important that we all got kind of into the whole working from home, which was fantastic, and the house was nice and clean, and the washing was done, and the ironing was up to date. The reality is, as Cass, you need to learn to trust people to enable them to do the job that you're paying them to do, and that will obviously engage them as well. The thing for me is I spent 132 days working from home from March the 23rd, and initially it was fantastic, but towards the end of it, I really had to start to challenge myself as to how I would continue to engage myself. And when you've got a team that reporting to you as well, you have to do that with your team as well. It became boring, it became challenging. Towards the end of it, the other half would go around and I would literally look and go, do you have to breathe so loudly? And it's just those things that really start to take a grip on you. And I think the kind of being a parent and making sure that you're looking after the kids is really, really important. As a business, we've really struggled with that as well. We're quite a traditional business, it's fair to say. Working from home and remote working was never really on the cards. So in one way, COVID has helped us progress to become a more agile business. But that obviously has got its own challenges as well.
Yeah, definitely. I know, Nick, that as organisations across Europe have had to have more space to be COVID safe, your products are more in demand than ever before.
Yes, definitely. Business is absolutely booming, and obviously under normal circumstances we'd love that. It's just a shame of the situation we're in. But yeah, as you say, Mark, businesses, education, healthcare all need more space at the moment due to circumstances. So we are doing exceptionally well.
Well, you've been tremendously agile, and it's a nice reminder, Nick. Again, a bit like Cass said, is that as human beings, you know, we're not perfect people. We're not super shiny leaders. We're human beings, and this is not easy. And working from home is full of challenges as well. Good. Thank you for sharing some personal examples there. Thank you. Good. And Adi, would you join us, please, and tell us, same for you, what lessons have you learned both for Microsoft and for you personally?
Sure. So a lot of my lessons are similar to the ones that my colleagues here, Nick and Cassandra, have shared, but I want to share a few examples of lessons that I think it's things we've known before but have been reinforced in this period. I think the first one is the crucial importance of transparency and clarity in an area where we're also uncertain of what's happening and what's going to happen and what the future looks like. I think that at our company, Microsoft, they've done a really great job of being very transparent and clear about management decisions and plans, but not just about the decisions, but also the data and the processes that led to them. And I think that transparency gave us as employees and as managers both the tools and the peace of mind about what's going to happen. A good example of that is a biweekly email that we all get from Kurt Delbeni, Vice President at Microsoft, where he shares bi-weekly the status of each one of the Microsoft offices around the world on this dial that they defined, which is a 6-stage dial for the hybrid workplace, from the offices are closed all the way to the offices are open and all the work from home options in between. And they've explained very clearly what causes this dial to go up a notch or go down a notch per location, and what is the data leading to that. So I think that gives a lot of clarity and transparency. And for me personally, it's been a huge tool as a manager and as an employee. So that was one important learning. The second important learning is how contagious positivity is. I think one of the really great things that have been going on is that our management, both senior leadership out of Seattle, but also local leadership, are very adamant about sharing positive news, business successes, great things that are happening, our impact on our social impact, projects that we're doing, how we're helping society. And I think that has a very contagious effect on the mood, the overall engagement, so keeping the good news up. But on the other hand, striking a very delicate balance about, there's a lot of good news, but it's also okay not to be okay. And there's actually a program at Microsoft called It's Okay Not to Be Okay that gives both the tools, but also just the legitimacy for people to feel the way we all feel, which is, times are difficult. So it's that balance between positivity, which is contagious, but also it's okay not to be okay. So that's the second piece. And I have a long list of things that I've written that I wanted to share. Conscious of time, I'll just share the third one, which I think is the most important one, and that's the power of authenticity. And, personally, I've always been a very authentic person, even when it sometimes was not accepted in the workplace. But I think now, after COVID-19 and with remote work from home, it's become super crucial. We're all working from our home offices or homes in our casual clothes, in the surroundings. We're all sharing the same experiences. And I think that creates a feeling of connectedness. And that, in turn, creates a feeling of belonging and loyalty to the organization and employee engagement and better productivity and all the great things that come along with it. So authenticity, not just by employees, but by managers and allyship, is super important. And I'll share with you that last night I put up a post on LinkedIn about this event, inviting people to listen in. And I shared a personal anecdote about recently having asked my manager for some time off due to personal circumstances resulting from COVID-19. And that's something that I would have never had the courage to do before these times, taking that much time off for personal reasons and talking about it publicly. And I think it's the combination of the Microsoft culture that made me feel it's okay not to be okay and to ask for that time. And that personal center that allowed me to do so. And I have to share with you that the responses has been amazing, both internally at Microsoft from people showing empathy, but also asking how they can help and providing professional support, and externally from people saying, you know, how important it is to show that leaders also need to take time off. So authenticity is my third lesson.
They're great insights, Adi, and thank you for sharing those with us. That's a very personal example. We are hearing right now that vulnerability is becoming an important part of building trust and showing people that, you know, we are vulnerable, we are concerned and afraid, and it is okay not to be okay. And you're a great role model of how to do that and showing us the way there. Thank you for sharing that. So I suppose we'll move on to our second question. You know, why don't we stay with you, Adi, while you've got camera? When it comes to connecting with people remotely, what do you think are the secrets of success for you? What are your best tips on how to engage people remotely?
I think that's a difficult question. I think there's a few tips on different levels. First is on the cultural level. I talked about transparency and clarity, keeping that compass both from a business perspective of our shared goals, but also from a cultural perspective of our shared values is important. From a technical perspective, time management is super important now with remote engagement and remote work. Keeping online meetings short because our attention span is just not the same, and we've all heard of Zoom fatigue or Teams fatigue. So keeping the meetings short and spacing them out, and having video on. I personally do that with all my meetings. I really ask for people to have the video on. There's a huge difference in engagement when we just hear the voice or see the person. And running all kinds of morale lifting programs. We have a program called Out of Scope at Microsoft, where we can sign up for all kinds of learnings and trainings that are not work related, like cooking or poetry classes that we do with our colleagues. And I think that has a huge impact on employee engagement.
Great, those are great ideas, and again, we are constantly reminded about the importance of camera, Adi, and we are getting that more and more as a request. Is can you please keep your camera on during your training? It's an important part of engagement. Great insights. Thank you, Adi, for sharing those. Cass, same question, please. Tips for how do we engage people remotely? What's your secret sauce?
Well, it's very similar to Adi's to start off with. Thank you for all of that, Adi. I think your point about positivity really resonated with me, but without, as you say, feeling as though you've always got to be up. So I think there are two main things for me. One is that in line with that positivity, asking people what's going on, what they're winning at in their lives. So often the conversations we have, particularly when we're doing remote virtual meetings, tend to be about a project, about something we're doing as a team. It's not necessarily, if we're not talking about the catch-ups, for example, that Soren mentioned between line managers and individuals, we're talking about project work. So individuals are talking to their managers or management team members about something they're working on, and that conversation can stay just in that place. And what people really want to talk about sometimes is what's going on for them, what won with them, you know, whether it was spilling a glass of water all over your desk, or it was the fact that your daughter, your son, your child, your pet, whatever, has done something really interesting today, and to be able to share that. So to give people space and time to talk about what's going on for them that they would normally do whilst making a cup of tea or coffee in the kitchen, or the water cooler conversations that we're all missing. Yeah. And for me, that links up with the idea of doing whatever you would ordinarily do to engage your teams, but doing it more. I don't think there's a particular equation that says you do it twice as much or 3 times as much, because it will depend on individuals. But for me, the measure of whether I am operating in the way I'd like to as a leader is on any day, at any time, if somebody asks me what a member of my team is getting on with or how they're feeling, if I can't answer that question because I've not spoken to them recently enough to know that, I'm not really engaging with them, and I'm not making them feel as though they matter. And that's what this all really comes down to. We all want to feel as if we matter, regardless of whether we're seen or not. So that's the main point about positivity and giving the people the opportunity to talk about, and for me to talk about what's going on for me keeps me connected. But I think secondarily to that is something that Adi said about being on camera. And this is a lesson that I really learned from my daughter. She had a full timetable at school where she was online from 9 until 4 most days throughout the time we were in real lockdown. And she wasn't allowed to have her camera on, and she couldn't have her microphone on either unless she'd asked permission. And of course, when you have a class of 24 children who are in their teens, that probably is a very sensible thing to do. But what she didn't feel is that she was seen. And she became quite exhausted, and I only noticed after a couple of weeks that by not being able to be seen on camera, even because she was multitasking, or she was drinking a cup of tea, or she'd just finished her breakfast when she started her lesson, she didn't feel as though she was being engaged with. She didn't have a face, and she didn't have a voice. And really interestingly, the Teams or Zoom or WebEx fatigue that we've all experienced is somewhat alleviated by the fact that you feel that other people can see you. And so they can tell if you're feeling a bit tired, or if something else is going on, or if you seem a bit distracted. So that, for me, the piece around engagement of anybody who's remote is making sure that they are seen, not just that you can see them, as you mentioned, Mark. If they're in a training session, you want to know that they are engaged and they're online, but actually ensuring the flip side, which is that whatever's going on for you, it's okay for you to see me, and it's okay for me to see you because I want you to be real with me. And those are the two things that really made a difference for me.
Good for you. Thank you for sharing those. And again, a nice personal example from your family there. I do hope that as a result of what's going on right now in the world, if any leadership quality has improved, it's probably empathy. So it's great that people are now starting to authentically pick up on how are people feeling, how are people doing. Good. Thank you for sharing those, Cass. Nick, you've already told us that right at the start of this, that Porticabin probably was not an organisation where remote working was the norm. So how have you dealt with that? How have you kept people engaged?
We've come on leaps and bounds, Mark, in all honesty, since we first kind of went into lockdown. And I think the biggest kind of my biggest kind of key learning here is about trusting them and keeping as much normality in the working week as you possibly can. Obviously, there are certain things that you can't do, but just because we weren't face-to-face in an office didn't stop me having a conversation with them. And it almost made the conversations more kind of open and honest and transparent with the individuals that I was talking to. Now, I've only got a small team of 3 here, but by having those kind of weekly catch-ups and especially a monthly one-to-one and a meaningful conversation really gave us the opportunity to uncover any challenges or issues that people were going through. And I became really good at asking how they were and how they were feeling, but also importantly about how their family were as well. And I now kind of start most of my conversations with my European colleagues, how are you and how are the family? And I've learned a lot about the challenges that individuals are going through. And obviously, Cass has just shared an experience with her daughter. And by talking to colleagues about their families, that impacts on work. And I think when you are aware of some of those challenges that people are going through, it helps you become a better leader, a better manager to help people work through those challenges. Because guess what? We all go through those challenges. We all feel really bad sometimes, the fact that you can't see the end of can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. So we're all going through these experiences as individuals. I think if you talk about those individuals with your team, then it makes you feel more human, and it also engages them more. I genuinely do believe that. The other thing that Adi said is make sure video's on. There's nothing worse than having a meeting with a room full of people that you can't see because you just don't know what they're doing. And I think when you can see people, you're more likely to be more involved in that conversation because people know that you can be seen.
Yeah, great insights. And again, Nick, thank you for reminding us about the importance of connecting with people on a personal level. And I think a lot of the corporate stuff's been stripped away now, and our communications are much more on a personal level. Nick, while we've got you on, as you think ahead now and thinking about leadership skills for the future, what do you see are some additional skills that leaders are going to need over the next 30, 90, 120 days? What do you see at Portakabin?
For me, it's all about the agile working. We are still running our business busier than ever before. We normally have a very busy period during the summer holidays when the schools are off. That started kind of mid-April and it is continuing now. So for me, it's about being more agile, multi-projects working at the same time. So that business skills, that's what I look at. That's what I'm researching, and that's looking at how I can develop that for our business. But on the side of it, it's that kind of, I go back to the kind of the parent piece. It's a bit. I mean, there's a book called The Chimp Paradox, which is a fantastic book, which really kind of hits home about how people react to different situations. It's a book that's helped me through the last kind of 6 months. So I think leadership skills for the future is about agile working, multi-project working as well, but also looking at the human side of people and not being afraid to ask, how are you today?
Good stuff, thank you. In the chat box, Camilla's asking the name of the book. Just say it again for us, Nick.
It's The Chimp Paradox.
Good stuff. Is that by Steve Peters?
That's the one. Yeah, it's a great book.
Great, thank you. And again, thank you, Nick, about reminding us about agility. I know that values are really important at Portakabin, and the way that you are connecting with your team is a strong reflection of the values of the organisation. Same question, Adi. What about for you at Microsoft? What do you see for leaders in the coming 3-6 months? Where does the focus need to be for additional skills, additional competence? What do you see, Adi?
So I think the first skill is something that you've mentioned, Mark, and I think everybody has mentioned here, and that's emotional intelligence, showing empathy, allyship. That has always been a core value at Microsoft, and I think you don't develop that overnight. You don't develop it instantly because of COVID-19. It has to be a core value of the organization, but I think now it really comes into play, and hopefully it's already there, but that's a skill that every leader should have, in my opinion. And I can definitely feel it and see it in our leadership. The second one I would say, clearly, technically, is communication skills, both verbally, written. We've lost so much of how we communicate, the body language, the smell, how we dress, all the nonverbal stuff is gone. And so communication skills and how we can deliver them in an online method, even just technically, I think is a very important skill. All the digital skill sets, without the digital skill set, we're just not going to be able to communicate effectively in this time. And I think the last one has to do with macro management rather than micro management. I think Cassandra mentioned before the trust that you need to be able to lead now. You have to trust people that they're managing their time, they're managing their assignments, their work schedule might be a little bit more flexible than before, but they can still deliver, and you have to kind of let go and trust them and be there for them. And that requires leading by influence, leading with trust, leading by personal example, but not micromanaging. And I think moving forward with so much work from home and in the new normal, that's going to be very crucial.
And thank you for showing us how to communicate online. When you speak into your camera, we feel your positivity and your energy, and that's an important part of getting those emotions across. And it is definitely possible by camera. You're certainly showing us how to do that today. Thank you, Adi. Cass, what are your thoughts about Cello Health? What are your leaders focused on developing over the coming months?
Thank you. Well, first of all, I wanted to say I agree. I feel like I'm in the same room as Abby. So while she absolutely mentioned that we've lost that idea of all of those real communication factors that are not about what you say, I feel you, Abby. So I'm with you absolutely there. I think the two things that I've really noticed that we've needed to have at Cello are flexibility, and by that what I mean is a flexibility in what our definition is of success as leaders. So we all have a certain amount of experience. We might have worked in extremely fast-paced environments where success is defined by, you know, how quickly you rise to the top, how much you earn, how many people you manage, all sorts of things that are very truly metric measures of success that have worked in the past, let's be honest. But we're looking at a workforce now that both is in an environment that is working in a crisis. I think I heard a great phrase once, I think it might have even been from the NHS, that said, you're not just working from home, you're at home working in a crisis. And in that situation, you're asking people to find a way of still doing their job when there are so many other factors going on that are influencing them that are nothing to do with whether or not they can be online. It's all to do with how they're feeling about the environment around them. So for me, this idea of empathy, which everybody's mentioned, it is a critical skill for any leader, has to go a little bit further into, I understand the situation that you're facing, and I also understand it's not the same as mine. I understand that your definition of success might be just getting through today and making sure you've done the tasks you needed to for your job, that your children have done some school today, or that you have been outside at least once today, just depending on who you are. And I think that idea of both being self-aware enough to recognize that what I think is important might not be the same as those who work for me, and to be okay with that, because I trust them and I know they can do their job. But on top of that, to be able to manage myself. So when I am in conversations like this, and as Addy beautifully demonstrated, people can sometimes and often feel what you're really feeling, to manage my response when what I think is successful or what I think is good is not necessarily the same as what the people that I'm working with or who are working for me are experiencing every day. So it's taking that element of empathy further and saying, you don't have to be like me to be successful. You need to be you. And that obviously plays back straight into the idea of vulnerability and authenticity. But I think it's a leadership skill that's very easy to lose when sometimes the idea of success being something other than what we've been successful at really threatens our self-worth. And we may not notice that until it's too late and everybody in our team feels like they've got to be like us. And they can't, because they're not who we are.
Yeah, that's really powerful, Cass. And again, as you speak that, we feel how important that is to you. Those are not just words, that's absolutely who you are. And that comes across as really authentic and genuine. So thank you for sharing that passion with us. So we've talked about things like emotional intelligence and empathy. What are your thoughts on how well people can be trained in those areas? What's been your experience? What's been the impact of training on you? And does that help you be more empathetic? Is that something you can train?
Well, if you'd asked me that question 5 years ago, I can give you a real life example of this. If you'd asked me that question 5 years ago, I would have said no. I would have said that actually people are naturally empathetic. It's a skill you have. You either enjoy that because it's part of your humanity or it's not. And I was taught a lesson by a great colleague of mine, somebody who's been with cello for the last nearly 5 years, who doesn't have a apparently natural empathetic manner. She is a great people manager. She is an extremely ambitious, enthusiastic, straightforward woman who works with the Cello Health team. And she would admit herself that she didn't really know what empathy was. And she was one of the first people who came to me and said, I know you just do this naturally. How do you do it? And I'm not sure that I can learn that. Are there some books I can read? Is there a way that I can change the way that I'm interested in people that doesn't feel very emotional to being something that is emotional, so that I can imagine that I am in their shoes being them, which is for me what empathy is about. And it caused me to really take a step back and think about it. At the time I was responsible for learning and development. And I offered her a range of books, from Why Should People Be Led By You through to The Golden Book, because I think it's a great example of how you can influence people without telling them what to do, which has often been the way that leaders have behaved in the past. And actually, I would now say she is one of the best line managers and people managers, and therefore leaders, although they're a different set of skills really, in cello that we have, because she's had to learn it. She's recognized the gap in her competence. She's seen that she wants to get better at it. And by figuring out the questions that people who are naturally empathetic ask their teams and their colleagues, she's started to put that into every single communication and connection she has with any member of her team. And it's turned her into someone who now seems very naturally to be very empathetic, because she remembers that. She almost puts it front and center. She has to prioritize it because she wouldn't do it naturally. And as a result, to answer your question, Mark, she has naturally become more empathetic. Right. For me, it's a skill similar to intuition. It's a muscle that you have to work. If you don't work it, it gets a little bit weak, and maybe you don't feel that you use it, and other things start to compensate, such as sympathy, which can be quite dangerous in the workplace. But certainly it's something that you can work on and certainly improve on. And for myself, even on several occasions, I've become more of an empathetic version of myself through training, where people have said to me, I'm not really sure that was you who showed up then. I think it was the performer. Yes. And getting that kind of feedback really helps you become more authentic and therefore more naturally human and empathetic.
Yeah, great. Do you know, one of the big things that organisations are looking at right now, Cass, is the power of storytelling to really engage people. And the way you tell stories and use examples to make your point is very powerful and very credible.
Thank you very much. Well,
thank you.
That's what I'm hoping.
Guys, we are going to go to the chat box in just a few minutes, everybody. If you have questions for any of our guests, please put that in the chat box. We're just going to hear from each of them again. So any questions in the chat box, please, and we'll have about 10 minutes for questions at the end. And Adi, what's been your experience with training and how that can help people with the skills that they need for the future?
So first I want to say, Cassandra, I could listen to you all day, and it does feel like we're in the same room. I relate with so much that you're saying. And specifically to the question of whether you can learn empathy, that is something that I've been looking at, learning, and thinking about for the past 13 years. As you mentioned, Mark, I have an autistic son who's 13 years old. And one of the challenges with people that are autistic, or specifically my son, is can I teach him empathy? And can I teach him, despite his disability, to see and feel like he's in somebody else's shoes? And a lot of professionals have told me that's not possible. And I think today, with my experience, that it is completely possible. And it is at first very synthetic, a little bit like artificial intelligence, where you teach by patterns that are repetitive on how to react and what to ask. But eventually, if you do it enough times, it becomes a nature, and then it becomes part of your personality and becomes very authentic. So I can tell you from my experience as a mother of an autistic child that you can teach empathy, at least partially. And from a corporate perspective, I will say, I'm sorry, there's a little bit of noise on the line. From a corporate perspective, I will say that when an organization, and specifically Microsoft, makes it a priority to have empathy at the forefront of everything, allyship is one of our core values. When it becomes a priority, it's part of every training, it's part of every onboarding of every new employee, it's repeated in everything that we do, in every marketing asset that we create. It becomes gradually part of how you do things, and then it becomes ingrained in who you are. So yes, there's people that it comes maybe more naturally to them, and people that it's less natural, but I completely believe that it's something that can be taught to a big extent. Yes.
Great, thank you. And again, thank you for using a very personal example there and sharing your family situation. I have a granddaughter who's also on the autism spectrum, so I kind of know the challenges that you're up against there. And you remind us that sometimes just developing new habits ultimately seeps into our new way of being. So sometimes you just got to get on and do it and practice doing the right things. Good, thank you, Adi. Thank you for sharing that. Remember, questions in the chat box, guys. We're coming to Q&A in a moment. Nick, what's been your experience with, you know, as a specialist L&D person? What's been the impact of training people in the right way? How does that help people develop skills going forward?
It's a great question, Mark. We've obviously changed to online pretty much since lockdown began. If I'm honest, was it a challenge when we first started? Yes, it was, without a doubt. We have excelled ourselves now. We've transferred all of our current face-to-face stuff to online learning. And I think when you see people make that switch from not knowing what they're really come to the training for, let's be honest, a lot of times managers send people on training. They don't really know what the benefit is. They don't really know what the end result is, but they'll send them on the training because they need to do it. And seeing those people transform into different leaders and different managers and even different colleagues is really, very rewarding. One of the challenges that we have within this business, and indeed other businesses I've worked at, is the amount of people that come to me and ask the question, I need to go on a training course to learn how to become emotionally intelligent, or I need to go on a training course to become a better leader. And one of my challenges to that is, well, I kind of go straight back and say, well, what else can you do other than going on a training course? There's all the terminology around behavior breeds behavior, people how you expect to be treated, lead by example. They are possibly the best ways of training somebody. If people see you doing something and you're getting results and you're talking to people in the way that you expect to be treated yourself, for me, that's the far best way we can train people. The challenge we have is getting those people to understand that and kind of deferring to that rather than just asking, can they go on a training course?
Yeah, for sure. And I think leaders, have a great responsibility today, Nick, to enable their people to adapt. And as Cash reminded us, we're dealing with a crisis here whilst we're working at home, and people need a lot of coaching and support today from their leaders. Okay, good. Thank you, guys. I might come back to you with an additional question. So, anybody, questions, please. We do have about 10 minutes left for questions. Who has the first question, please? Either just go to the chat box and put that in the chat box, or if you want to raise your hand, we will unmute you and you can ask your question personally. So, who's got the first question, please? Click on your little hand and raise that, and we'll see if we can get some questions for the group. Any questions, please? Go ahead. Looks like there are no questions so far. I'm going to come back to our panelists and ask them another question. Okay, we'll keep going until we see some questions in the chat box. There aren't any at the moment. Nick, I know that you've had some experience already with Dale Carnegie. Could you say a bit more about that? That's going for you.
Yes, of course I can, Mark. We engaged with Dale Carnegie late last year, well, probably this time last year actually, and we've kind of gone to market to look for a provider to deliver some sales or some commercial training. Obviously, Dale Carnegie were an outright winner in the kind of process that we used, and kind of moving from the original pilot that we did in Manchester to moving the entire kind of project to an online solution. Yeah, was I nervous? Yes, I was. I'm going to be very honest. We were all entirely. I think if we're honest, Mark, I think even you were slightly nervous. And we've smashed it. We've nailed it. We've delivered a pilot now in the UK. We've delivered a pilot in France. The feedback we're getting is absolutely fantastic. And tied in with the Golden Book as well. I mean, the Golden Book is such a simple, just a simple process. When you just read the Golden Book, there are things in there that top tips that you can just take away. Some of the stuff I've alluded to it, about leading by example and treat people how you expect to be treated. Everybody likes to be thanked, without a doubt. And I think when you thank people, it plays into the book, and it just flicks a switch in people that makes them feel valued. I think the art of saying thank you is not overdoing it, because nobody wants to be thanked every single time you see somebody. It's just about rewarding genuine behaviour. So we're really pleased to be working with Dale Carnegie. We're kind of at pilot stage, and I see this kind of relationship building well into 2021 and beyond.
Thank you. And I have to say that the reason that the programs are successful is largely because of the qualities of your people rather than the qualities of ours. You give us great people to work with, and that's a real pleasure. We do have a question, guys, in the chat box. It's from our colleague Sam Piper. So Sam's asking, what's been your most successful reward initiative? Adi, could you talk about that? What's been working for you in terms of rewarding people? Do you want to come on camera, Adi, and give us some thoughts on that?
Sure, yeah. So I think there's various reward initiatives going on at Microsoft simultaneously. I'm not sure what would be the most successful, but I'll share the ones that have had the most impact on me personally. One of them is actually a way of peers and colleagues to reward each other. And while that doesn't have a direct impact on compensation or prizes, it does get a lot of visibility, kind of like a popularity reward. And for me personally, I think that has as much impact or as much effect on my engagement and positivity as some of the official rewards that I would get from the company. From the company itself, we have various rewards. They're all based around our core values of our cultural values. Like One Microsoft, where there's cooperation between teams, so you would get a reward for that, or having being very customer-centric, so that's one of our values, so you'd get a reward for that. The entire process is nominated by peers, and the person that gets as many nominations as possible, then management would make a decision. And there's obviously also cash prizes and visibility to that reward, so that has impact. I have to say that now in COVID-19 times, I feel that those processes are less impactful than they would have been before, where we had large events in Las Vegas and you would go on stage and get a red jacket and everyone would clap. So it's not exactly the same, but you still get that sense of being recognized and getting rewarded, and that has an impact as well. But I think it's interesting that it's around values and not necessarily business successes.
Yeah, great. And that ties into a lot of things that you've been talking about already, Adi, with authenticity and encouraging people to behave in the right way.
Right.
So great that you're doing that. Same question, Cass. So what's been working for you in terms of reward at Cello Health?
Well, I think two things, actually. One is, as Sam said, he thought that Nick answered that question already, which was, yes, saying thank you. Well, I think one of the things that I've noticed at Cello is that over the time of becoming more and more comfortable with being online, saying thank you has somewhat got lost in the process. So I wouldn't necessarily say that the saying thank you to everybody whenever they do something for you is the most successful reward mechanism that exists. But what I do know it is the quickest way to stop people wanting to do things for you by forgetting. So maybe because in some occasions we found ourselves getting into chat messages constantly on Teams rather than picking up the phone, because you're either in a Teams meeting or a Zoom meeting or a WebEx meeting, or you can easily just send somebody a chat message rather than see them and speak to them. But we've started to see emails becoming a little bit like that, and I'm sure all of us have experienced this at some point in our lives, where the content of the email is actually written in the subject header, rather than it being a hello, dear, or, you know, you don't have to put all the niceties in. I'm very much like that, but not everybody's that way. So I guess my point is that saying thank you should never be underestimated, because as soon as you stop saying please and thank you to the people who work with you and for you, they very rapidly start to decide that they're going to put your request to the bottom of the pile, because they don't feel as though what they're contributing really matters to you any more than dropping them a quick 3-line message. So on that basis, I would go as far as saying, yes, I think that is one of the easiest things we can do, particularly in a COVID environment where perhaps some businesses don't have the financial support at the moment to be able to offer much more than that. If the very least we can do is make you feel valued, you will definitely want to do more.
Good stuff. Yeah, great. And you know that comes back to what we've always known, is that reward and recognition really do produce discretionary effort. A great reminder of that. Good, thank you. So there is just one more question in the chat box. So we're going to give you guys a minute each, because we're right on time. So the question is, how do you make sure that you keep your employees healthy? And that's both physical and mental. So Adi, why don't you go first? How do you keep people healthy, physically, mentally and spiritually at Microsoft? If you can do that in a minute, we would appreciate that. Go ahead, Adi.
I almost want to say by saying thank you, but I think it's part of it. I think mental health is about being seen, being recognized, and feeling legitimacy for being who you are and how you are. I think we do that well at Microsoft, and that's part of mental health. The second part of it is having a programmatic approach, allowing people to know where they can get help. Get mental health help, whether that's by professionals or within the organization, who they need to go to. We have a program of employees who are ambassadors that you can approach if you have a mental health issue, and they can help you and guide you as to who you need to go to. From a physical perspective, I don't know. If you have the answer, please tell me. I have not found the golden answer to how to keep physically healthy and fit, especially these days. We have a vast amount of programs. We've had online lessons. We've had machines sent to us at home. We've had competitions around the number of steps we take per day. We've had a lot of things, but I don't know. You give me the golden answer to that one.
Maybe there isn't a golden answer, Adi. Maybe it's just doing a lot of the things that you've been talking about already.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Nick, same question for you. How are you keeping people safe at Portakabin, mentally and physically?
From a mental health point of view, we've invested a lot over the last couple of years around mental health first aiders. We have a suite of those around our business, but specifically around the physical and mental health. During lockdown, we created a one-page document which was all around top tips for remote working. We knew that the majority of our workforce were working from home, and it was just a one-page document talking about when to have breaks, what to do during those breaks, some dietary information about getting out on your bike. We do cycle to work schemes. So it's not just about the mental health, it's also about the physical health. And the people are sat at home, they're eating more than they probably eat normally. From the government telling you to go out and eat. So people need to look after themselves from a physical well-being point of view, and we were quite keen on making sure that we gave people as much guidance as we possibly could to help them when they were working from home.
Good stuff. Yeah, guilty of charge, by the way, on eating more, so I can relate to that. Good. Thank you for sharing those, Nick. And Cass, your insights, please, at Cello Health.
My insight, as you'd imagine from me, is a very personal one, which is that we, as I mentioned, I head up the wellbeing team at Cello. I headed up the wellbeing team at Cello, and we made a decision to invest time into people. So we did something similar to what Nick described as giving everybody a one-page document that said this is how you could work from home. We even considered what that would mean for those who were shielding because they were in particularly vulnerable groups, or what they could do with their children or their pets or things like that, but also individual members of the team. So I'm also a yoga teacher and a fitness instructor. We just gave some of our time to teaching, and one of the things we did, which is for physical, mental and spiritual well-being, is we provided 3 times a week yoga classes, which were very easy to follow. It didn't matter whether you'd done them before or not, but covered both the idea of being physically present in your body, having the opportunity to meditate, so using mindfulness as a way of getting away from a stressful environment or changing your energy, and doing that in our own time. And for want of a better way of describing it, I think if your head of people is giving her time to do that, and it's okay to do a yoga class from 9 until 10 on a Friday morning, or at lunchtime, or early in the evening on a Tuesday, then it gives other people permission to say, well, normally I'd be working then, but maybe it's all right for me to do this. So I'm not saying it was just because it was me, but I certainly feel like when it's somebody who's in a leadership position offering that, it makes it a bit easier to say yes.
Almost back to the point about rewards. It's just giving people flexibility to say, you know, you've got flexibility to look after yourself, and I'm going to demonstrate that that's okay.
Exactly.
Well done, Cass. Thank you for sharing, guys. We are right on the edge here. Before we wrap up, I just want to say thank you to Adi and Nick and Cassandra, not just for giving up your time today, but for being authentic and being yourself. And showing us that leadership today is about being real and being vulnerable. And thank you for inspiring us with your insights and words. Jonathan, back to you, my friend.
Thank you, Mark, and I'll just reiterate that thanks to our fantastic panelists this morning. And also thank you to Mark as well for facilitating this and for Soren for that initial presentation. Well, thank you everyone for attending. It is now just gone 11:30. So it's been our pleasure to have you this morning or afternoon from wherever you're dialing in from. You will receive an email at some point just with the recording for this session, so do expect that, and also with a feedback tool. So please take some time, if you have some, just to let us know how this session has gone for you. And finally, if you'd like to reach out to us, we'd be happy to hear from you. There is a link in the chat box now with a contact us form. If you wish to contact us about anything, feel free to do so with that link. So have a great day, everyone. And to leave this session, simply click on that X towards the top right-hand side.
Everyone.
Sticking around, guys. If anybody's got any questions, we'll be here for a few more minutes. If you want to stay on and chat, you are very welcome.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Walter.